Citizen Kane, an oldie but a goodie, captures the life of a rich man in America. But rewatching it in the age of billionaires and endless media, it's a different beast. It shows us something that we should all know by now, but somehow we don't. The idea that while journalism and media can serve as a fundamental part of our democracy, they can also become a tool for powerful men to manipulate for their own ends. And while my initial thoughts after watching this film and seeing Elon Musk's takeover of Twitter were simply about this fact, watching it now, there's even more than meets the eye. And it's worth asking, how can something so old still be so relevant? Well, that's why they call it a classic, because it captures a truth about the world and humanity that is timeless. This film, in the modern age of billionaires, is also an indictment of men in power, specifically of rich men who were born rich, and who use that power and influence to shape the world. From the real-life counterparts of William Randolph Hearst, the founder of the still functional Hearst media empire, and Elon Musk, the mind behind Tesla and SpaceX, to the fictional Charles Foster Kane, featured as the titular character of Citizen Kane, we can see how art reflects life, and how even media from years and years past can still teach us something about life right now. But first, if you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing and liking the video. It helps me grow. Also, if you're inclined, you can share this on Reddit or somewhere. I feel like this video might shake things up in a fun way if it got the right attention. I mean, as Kane might have said, all publicity is good publicity. Anyways, let's get back to the video. Citizen Kane is the film of classic America. With brilliant acting and aesthetics, it captures a piece of our country forever. It follows a rich man's life and how he dies dissatisfied despite his wealth, longing only for the simplicity of his lost youth. The movie is based off the real-life publishing magnate William Randolph Hearst. Though his life didn't go exactly like this, many of the details are based off of his life, and he did pioneer yellow journalism, as did the main character of Citizen Kane, Charles Foster Kane. So we're gonna look mostly at the fictional Kane and at the very real Elon Musk, who's kind of doing the same thing. Initially, his takeover of Twitter sounded a lot like Kane's takeover of the New York Inquirer in the film. And yes, for this video, I'm calling it Twitter. Everyone can just deal with it. This video is purely opinion. We're going to look at it from a purely modern and kind of flat perspective. This is not going to be a deep dive on the movie. In fact, I will probably miss a lot because I'm focusing only on modern times. So if you have something constructive to say on the subject, please leave a comment below. The fascinating part of looking at these men in a modern context is because modern times seeks to vilify powerful men, often from a leftist or perhaps even Marxist perspective. It's not a useful perspective anymore. It comes off petty, jealous, and it's easily dismissed by these men. But if we look at it purely from a flat, face value perspective of how the characters in the film refer to the primary man in power, we can learn so much more. We're not going to talk much about Hearst, given that Citizen Kane captures the emotional part of him pretty well. The beauty of this story is that it makes a rich man into just a man. That's why it's Citizen Kane. We don't see it anymore because no one has much money these days, but truly wealthy people are some of the most devoid of normality. With all of his issues and deficiencies, the movie makes clear how Citizen Kane is not truly possessing power, but possessed by power itself. In looking at wealthy men from this perspective, we can see the wealthy men of our time in a new way, and in doing so, rewrite our very broken ideas about wealth in modern times, and perhaps aspire to something healthier for our society. So a quick summary. Citizen Kane follows the story of Charles Foster Kane, a young child whose family comes into money from a mine. His mother ships him to the East Coast with a trustee named Thatcher to run the fortune until he's 25, and able to run what eventually becomes a business empire. Kane, in his own words, gags on the silver spoon, and never quite fits into this rich world, getting kicked out of school after school until he finally decides he's going to take over one of the assets in his empire personally, the New York Inquirer.
One item on your list intrigues me, the New York Inquirer. A little newspaper I understand we acquired in a foreclosure proceeding. Please don't sell it. I'm coming back to America to take charge. I think it would be fun to run a newspaper. I think it would be fun to run a newspaper.
This sounds a lot like the reason why Musk took over Twitter, although I'm sure there were other reasons at play. Now, technically Kane is not born rich, but he becomes wealthy so early in life, and he doesn't have to work to earn that wealth or even keep it, so he fits into the same world as William Randolph Hearst or Elon Musk. And let's be clear, we're talking about Charles Foster Kane here, not Orson Welles. Like any actor, I'm sure he puts himself into his performance, but the character was different from Welles. Right off the bat, the audience is made aware of Kane's deficiencies, his delusions, and his mistakes. We are enamored with the way he speaks and his youthful brashness, his clearly overdeveloped ego. While this might be partially because of Orson Welles' brilliant acting, it's still true today. People love young men who come off unique, eccentric, and somewhat childish. It's how Musk came to be in a position of power beyond just his work. It's the mythos of that wealthy, eccentric innovator, these young men born into privilege, who seem to be given a special set of standards from the rest of us, because they are here to serve humanity. They even buy into the hype themselves, but the rich cannot serve us, and we're gonna get into why that is later on. Kane's deficiencies are very obvious. He comes off as an arrested adolescent, one who resents his wealth and wants to use his power to help the working man.
As such, it's my duty, and I'll let you in on a little secret. It's also my pleasure to see to it that decent, hard-working people in this community aren't robbed blind by a pack of money-mad pirates just because they haven't anybody to look after their interests. I'll let you in on another little secret, Mr. Thatcher. I think I'm the man to do it, you see. I have money and property. I don't look after the interests of the underprivileged. Maybe somebody else will. Maybe somebody without any money or property.
Yes.
He prints article after article attacking his own business interests and generally irritating his guardian Thatcher. He's not interested in the trappings of wealth and just wants to be loved, but he has no love to give. He wants people to love him, to be a savior for the working man. Instead, he comes off as a child, petty, unempathetic, and disconnected from anything except his ego. If Citizen Kane teaches us anything, it's that these men are not saviors. They can't be. They are just human, and both the past idea of leaders being infallible and the modern idea of leaders being superhuman because of their money, it's all just nonsense. They can't fix everything. They're just people like any of us. If anything, Citizen Kane gives credence to the idea that the ultra-rich are deficient. The beauty of this movie is that it takes a powerful man and puts him in that context. Behind the myth, he's just a man. He's a proud patriot, born with a sense of justice, eloquent, but also a child desperate for his mother's love. He's more a victim of his wealth and power than a joyful participant in it. But at the end of the day, he's just a man. We need to stop pretending like these people can fix everything. The savior myth is more seductive than ever before, but we miss the fact that these people are only human. Even Jesus was just a man who did his best. What made him great was that he never walked around acting like he was something incredible. He was humble. Musk and others love to pretend that they are going to change the world, and it makes them terrible leaders. They can't admit that they are just humans, flawed, with issues of their own, probably in need of a therapist or a doctor or a vacation. We're all born with terrible karmic loads, challenges, and blessings that we have to face down in our lives and conquer. Of course, this leads us to see their biggest deficiency. How can they save the people they can't even empathize with? Most people born rich are cut off from ordinary folks and ordinary problems. How can Musk and his cadre of ridiculous billionaires ever be of any use to us, offer us anything meaningful? Specialized figures of religious history that have survived over time are people who were of the people, who lived with us and understood our needs. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. It's a cliche, but Kane goes from being a sweet boy playing in the snow to a sad old man, lost in his ambitions and desires to be loved. At some point, we don't have money, money has us. I'm sure the wealthy people of modern times would argue otherwise, but they are possessed by their wealth in ways that we are not. Power is an intense thing, and I'm not saying that we should feel sorry for the rich, but they don't understand that their lives are not their own. They are limited to certain behaviors because of their money, fame, and influence. It's not even just about social expectations. It's about the fact that power is an energy in and of itself. It demands to be exerted. It makes us do brutal things, like writing a bad review of one's wife after forcing her to sing in front of a large audience, or pinning that review on your best friend, the dramatic critic, at your paper, and then firing him. It demands positions of power, and that not only everyone be in its control, but everything be in its control. The whole of reality must be determined by Kane, or Musk, or any other powerful man. At some point, we are not powerful people, we are puppets of power itself. By the power itself, Kane's forced to put immense pressure on himself. Powerful people feel this pressure to do things, to do everything. Whether it's money and hoarding resources or changing the world, they aren't told that they are just people, because they become vessels for that power. But ultimately, they are just people. And modern rich folks, like Musk, are especially vulnerable to this feeling. He cracks under that pressure, being delusional, his weird Twitter addiction. He needs to see himself as a human being, one that is going to die. And I'm sure he thinks that one of his absurd number of children will take over his dreams of taking humanity into space, but that's not guaranteed. Without recognizing his limitations, without being humble and aware of his humanity, he'll never really accomplish anything truly meaningful for the human race. And that could be said of all billionaires in modern times. Musk, and others like him, will go down in history just as William Randolph Hearst, and all the rich folks that came before them. Now, this is not to say he doesn't do innovative things. These types of wealthy people are often dedicated people. Even Kane lived at the Inquirer in the movie, in the same way that Musk lived at PayPal in the early days of his career. Both he and Kane buy these media properties with the intent of being saviors. The mythos of the mainstream media as some corrupt thing that is hiding the truth from the people has become so widespread these days, and this is one of the reasons why Musk has taken over Twitter with such a vice grip, beyond just trying to mask his deficiencies. And it's just as Kane says here.
I've got to make the New York Inquirer as important to New York as the gas in that light.
What are you going to do, Charlie?
Declaration of Principles. Got it all written out. Declaration of Principles.
You don't want to make any promises, Mr. Kane, you don't want to keep.
These will be kept. I'll provide the people of this city with a daily paper that will tell all the news honestly.
Now, they're going to get the truth in the Inquirer, quickly and simply and entertainingly, and no special interests are going to be allowed to interfere with that truth. I'll also provide them with a fighting and tireless champion of their rights as citizens and as human beings.
Kane's depiction of a fictionalized version of Hearst, who really did push forward the cause of yellow journalism, is still relevant today. Media manipulation in modern times is rooted in historical yellow journalism. We see it with Twitter.
I don't know how to run a newspaper, Mr. Thatcher. I just try everything I can think of.
George, you know perfectly well there's not the slightest proof that this armada's off the Jersey
Hello,
coast.
Mr. Bernstein.
Excuse me, Mr.
Can you
Kane.
prove it isn't? We have
Well-
no secrets from our readers, Mr. Bernstein. Mr. Thatcher is one of our most devoted readers. He knows what's wrong with every copy of the Inquirer since I took over.
Could send you prose poems about scenery, but don't feel right spending your money. Stop. There is no war in Cuba. Signed, Wheeler. Any answer?
Yes, dear Wheeler, you provide the prose poems. I'll provide the war.
I can't say for certain whether yellow journalism has been good or bad. I think that it has, over time, hurt democracy and the credibility of journalism overall. Of course, Hearst is still hailed as a problematic media mogul, and his empire does survive, though with the death of print media, who knows for how long. And while journalism has survived the loss of print media, most people, especially young people, get their news from social media, and Twitter plays a big role in that. Even Musk acknowledges that it is a kind of public square in modern times. In its early days, I remember watching someone who lived in New York real-time tweet the events of the plane that landed on the Hudson. I remember watching the Iranian protests in 2009 and the Arab Spring. It's more than just the Inquirer. It expresses and shapes public opinion. Somewhere around 2016, it turned into a dumpster fire, and having someone like Musk running it as his own website muddles reality in the same way that the Inquirer did back in Hearst's time. If you're not aware of the history, do some reading about Hearst and how he used lies to push his own agenda forward and help to make the Spanish-American War happen. I have a link in the description below if you're interested in reading more about that. Twitter isn't like that right now, but worse than that, it determines our reality. In Hearst's time, we could put down the newspaper, go outside and talk to our friends and neighbors, and the war was some distant far thing. The internet has so much more extreme consequences. It can make us feel as though the walls are closing in on us. Some faraway event becomes huge and impacts us personally, even if it doesn't. The rise of white supremacy is awful, but the internet makes it feel even bigger, even when we aren't directly impacted by it, because in the age of globalization, even faraway wars and instability impact our daily lives, whether it feels like we are impacted or we actually are, and letting someone like him run the show, is that wise?
Generous mind. I don't suppose anybody ever had so many opinions. But he never believed in anything except Charlie Kane. He never had a conviction except Charlie Kane in his life. I suppose he died without one. It's been pretty unpleasant. Of course, a lot of us check out without having any special convictions about death, but we do know what we believe in. We do believe in something.
Choosing to see these men as saviors makes them above the law and conventional standards and expectations of society. They feel invincible, so they do dumb stuff, like censorship. No one is allowed to talk about the failures of the new Tesla Cybertruck. It seems all rich people have this deficiency, the overdeveloped ego. They can't handle criticism with grace. Any man with humility would be able to, but the ultra-rich just can't do it. They're so wrapped up in their egos. And this is the problem that both Kane and Musk and others have. They see themselves as the beginning and the end. Humiliation, rejection, these are painful for everyone, but for the wealthy, it's debilitating from an emotional place, because they are never encouraged to cultivate compassion, kindness, empathy, and love in their lives for themselves or others. The public doesn't even see them as people because they don't behave like people. Their work is all that matters, and without those internal resources, they are desperate for the approval of the outside world, and the savior complex takes over. All these people can do is become puppets of power, destroying themselves and chunks of the world as they go. Case in point, Susan Alexander, Kane's second wife in the movie. She's a great metaphor for control, power, and the public. Kane was caught cheating on his wife with her by his political rival. He lost his wife, his political campaign, and his standing in the community. So he sets about to control her, because when he was caught with her, she was deemed a singer. In reality, she was just a 20-something who worked in a music store. He sets about to make Susan into a singer, even though she isn't really capable of it. He forces her to perform over and over again, against her will, until she finally tries to hurt herself just to get his attention. And this is what that need to control everything, to build a world in one's own image, can do to a person. It's lucky that Kane was never actually elected in the movie, because coming from a place of a fragile ego means that we must build a world that is in our own image. Every person, political party, the whole world, because they are not people, but merely vessels for power. When wealthy folks buy into their own mythos, they get high on their own supply, and they start to believe that only they can be the saviors. But at the same time, they also become desperate for that love and adoration that saviors get. Of course, real saviors don't do it for that reason. Firefighters and doctors do it to help people, not for gratitude and adoration. In this desire, Musk has created some truly fascinating things. He's pushed forward the cause of electric cars and other technology. By using the capitalist mindset, he has done something meaningful, but he's just another in a long line of inventors that slowly but surely push the cause of science and innovation forward. And it's not even him as much as it is the people working with him. Wealthy leaders often forget to give credit where credit is due, because they're so desperate for adoration, for control. But if you have ever loved someone, you know that to receive love, you must first give it. One cannot patronize to receive love. You have to meet people where they are, and rich leaders are never willing to do so. Rather than being actual saviors, it warps into the savior complex. And the real problem of the savior complex is summed up here by Joseph Cotton, who plays Kane's best friend.
Talk about the people as though you own them, as though they belong to you. As long as I can remember, you've talked about giving the people their rights, as if you could make them a present of liberty as a reward for services rendered.
Jed.
Remember the working man? You used to write an awful lot about the working man.
Oh, go on
He's turning
home.
into something called organized labor. You're not gonna like that one little bit when you find out it means that your working man expects something as his right, not as your gift.
The story tells us that for all of his wealth and power, his sprawling estate, none of it could bring Kane real satisfaction. The movie tends to disparage wealth as a paltry thing. The people in the film feel sorry for Kane. Even Susan Alexander, his alcoholic ex-wife, publicly humiliated, penniless in the end, feels sorry for him, not herself. Because anyone could amass an empire of money if all they cared about was money. And that is absolutely true. Read Think and Grow Rich or any of the other law of attraction wealth-minded authors out there, and there are scads of them. And they will tell you, if you care only about money, you will make lots and lots of money. But it's not what really matters. Of course, this was before World War II, and consumerism wasn't a part of all things yet, not like it is today. People often wonder why wealthy people chase wealth. But really, they're chasing influence. And this is the problem with Musk buying Twitter and other billionaires buying up everything in our worlds that run our lives. Where can we go to find something that isn't theirs? Where can we go to not be pawns in their armies, pushed around to fit their vision of the future? And how do we get these people help so they stop demanding that the whole world conform to their vision just so that they feel better? Perhaps people in the past, or at least those who wrote this movie, had a more realistic understanding of the emptiness of endless wealth and the importance of human connection and love. This story isn't jealous or angry about wealth. It pities the wealthy for what they lack that most people had back then. Because when we die, our material things fade into obscurity. Billionaires in modern times act like their inventions are forever and that they will live forever. But they will die, and so will their work. One day, Amazon won't be the most popular site for shopping on the internet. One day, no one will use Facebook. But spiritual wealth, the gifts that we give each other that are intangible, the love we have for our children, our partners and pets and family members, the good that we do in our communities, the belief we feel for an invisible entity, someone will remember those things. If you nurture a person in the world, as a teacher, as an elder in your family, or in some other way, they will never forget it. We take the memories of those moments with us when we pass. Our spirits live on in this way. In his dying moments, Kane thinks only of his childhood toy, his lost youth, and the missing love of his mother. He died feeling sad and less than, remembering his childhood and past, all the things that truly mattered to him. He was a sentimental man, though I'm not sure how realistic that is of any rich person. The way rich folks are these days, they don't tend to be sentimental. Modern rich folks have no such cares. It seems like that, at least. Certainly not in the way that ordinary people do. Or perhaps it's just their front-facing image, and we'll never know the truth. I know we're not talking too much about Hearst here, but one thing about power worth mentioning is the way that it can shift allegiances very easily. Charles Kane never switched his politics in the film, but maybe because that's hard to believe that someone as intense as Orson Welles could ever shift his ideas so easily. But both Hearst and Musk have been known for changing their politics. Elon Musk started his foray into Twitter as a champion of free speech, but he has slowly been shifting to someone who is silencing any opposition against him because it hurts his business. I'm sure there are lots of other examples of him switching sides based on what's beneficial to him. I didn't look into it. If you know any, comment below. Businessmen, rich people, they seem to espouse what suits them, whatever works for them, without clear, unchanging principles. In conversations about businessmen, people will often point out that businessmen are more virtuous, trustworthy, or somehow better because their only focus is on making money, producing abundance, and creating wealth. But they lack principles as a result. By being only interested in money, their allegiances shift as necessary, whereas community leaders, even politicians, tend to stay in their lanes over the years. And even if they change parties, their viewpoints on issues stay the same usually. There are obvious exceptions to this, but even if Hillary changed her viewpoint on gay marriage, she was still a Democrat. If businessmen care only about money, then things like the public good are irrelevant. Money is not always the public good because it doesn't get dispersed the way it ought to by business entities. Business is about hoarding resources for oneself. And even if you do make money and jobs for others without keeping the bulk for yourself, well, the way the system is designed, you feel like an idiot. It's strange that people trust businessmen more with everything, especially the economy, when usually they have little real knowledge of politics, economic systems, or anything beyond their own work. And their work is usually about grinding on a particular task and grinding their employees into dust in the process. It's that foolish mythos of the businessman as a leader who will swoop in and save us from everything. But they are just people too, and often unknowledgeable ones. Businessmen like Musk and Hearst make drastic shifts based on what serves their financial goals. In the case of Musk, it doesn't make sense, but really it's the same thing that Kane did from the very beginning, allying himself with the working man. And believe it or not, even if Musk is feuding with pro-union people like AOC, he's allying himself with a certain kind of working people, those who believe purely in the capitalist system. It's weird because it hurts his brand in the long term, much like attacking his own business interests in the Inquirer hurt Kane in the long term. But as Kane said, he's two people, the businessman and the petulant child who has never been told no, desperate for attention and validation. On a side note here, we are responsible for creating wealth monsters like we have today, because we glorify wealth above all else. Now obviously this is because we are struggling to live, but even beyond that, we don't see our value as individuals. In this movie, ordinary people were seen as being more valuable than than wealthy people, because the fact is that the intense pursuit of wealth destroys other things that are more important, things that make life worth living. We have, if we allow ourselves to, emotions, instincts, love, joy, kindness, the ability to grow and adapt. We're normal, but we all want to be like rich people now, thinking that because they don't have to worry about money, they're somehow better off than us. But to become that person often means to become a pretty messed up person. Somewhere along the way, being a narcissist or a sociopath, being disconnected from reality, being generally abnormal became the expectation. We are all expected to be like these people, without thinking for a moment that they are deficient in ordinary things, which are what are truly valuable. Rich people aren't like the rest of us. Maybe because they're more intelligent, more cutthroat, more capable, or maybe they are more privileged, but in the grand scheme of things, they aren't normal. Famously wealthy people aren't aspirational. At least, they shouldn't be. These societal aspirations create a world that is deficient in ordinary things, in love, relationships, happiness, things that rich people don't care much about, because we're all expected to behave in the hustle culture mindset that robs us of such things. As the famous rich man from The Simpsons, Mr. Burns, might say,
"I'll keep it short and sweet. Family, religion, friendship. These are the 3 demons you must slay if you wish to succeed in business. When opportunity knocks, you don't want to be driving to the maternity hospital or sitting in some phony baloney church or synagogue." Questions?
Which do you think is more important, hard work or stick-to-itiveness?
Are there any real questions?
Ultimately, Musk and company can move the needle forward on progress and upgrading humanity. But what does it matter if there isn't something worth saving? If he's espousing problematic people on Twitter in a bid to find community and validation, then what does it matter if he moves humanity to Mars? He would be taking the very worst of us with him. So, should Musk and all of the others just stop doing what they are doing? No, that's just too simple of an answer. Though many leftist and communist types would say yes. For example, TV's most hilarious but also leftist show, Abbott Elementary, would make that argument, especially in an episode from this season. Abbott Elementary is basically an office-style mockumentary following a group of West Philly teachers and their challenges in teaching in an underfunded school. In a recent episode, their school is designated a historical landmark by the city, and there's going to be a ceremony to commemorate the building with a plaque and everything. But when it's discovered that the namesake of the school was a racist city planner who only named the school after himself to cover up his work of segregating the city, the ceremony is set to be cancelled. The staff work tirelessly and find his descendant, another Willard R. Abbott, who seems to be perfect, who works to erase the legacy of his ancestors' racism. The young man is set to speak at the commemoration, and upon initial checks, he seems like a decent person, until in the middle of his speech, he starts talking about how the Earth is flat and the moon is a spaceship. In the end, the teachers commemorate the school with a picture of the first group of black teachers that had taught at Abbott many years ago. In modern times, our leaders are problematic. We have really high standards these days, and power is a corrupting influence, whether you are Elon Musk or the 5th-generation descendant of a Philadelphia city planner. In the past, we gave more leeway to our leaders to be problematic. There was a range of acceptable behavior, from horrifying to just kind of crappy, from every president's affairs to war crimes to personal abuses. But in modern times, and with social media being as invasive as it is, we just don't have that kind of bandwidth for our leaders anymore. There are many reasons why that is, and likely one that is driving Musk is the proliferation of the media news on the internet. People know everything about every leader now. They can't hide. It's a bit like the Nixon-Kennedy debates, in which those who watched the debates on TV believed Kennedy had won, but those who heard it on the radio believed Nixon had won. It's why Musk bought Twitter and is trying to manipulate public opinion. It's so he can exist and keep doing his work, but it's a bit like trying to control smoke or water, things that just flow naturally. We can't do it, and fighting the flow is more damaging than simply letting go. Most people just want to live life and don't feel the need to save everyone and be extraordinary in modern times. One's thirst for power makes them problematic, because the gap between ordinary people and the powerful is so vast now, it may well be 2 different worlds. If Musk wants to be useful in this mission that he feels so compelled to accomplish, then he, as any true leader, must learn humility. I think Citizen Kane shows us something that has been a problem with leadership in our society since day one, and that is our inability to hold our leaders accountable. Of course, now that we are holding them accountable, no one is good enough, because holding our leaders accountable shouldn't just be about destroying and removing them from power, but demanding that they behave better. If Kane is any example of Musk, these are people who want to be loved, to be appreciated for their power and gifts, and they do have them, but they're also designed to be put through the ringer, and they should be. Such power, whether it comes from luck, astrology, sheer ruthlessness, one's family, whatever it may be, it should be interrogated and regulated. It needs to be shepherded by other leaders, elected or community and people. We could build a leftist or anarchist world in which there's little structure of leadership, but I think we're not ready for that world yet. Maybe one day we won't have singular leaders who we feel the need to rely on completely. Maybe the power that flows through single geniuses these days will one day be split up into various groups, but we're not there yet. So we need to focus on teaching these people that their genius is not theirs. It belongs to all of us, to humanity as a whole, and seeking ego and glory belittles it. They are not something extraordinary for themselves. They are shepherds for a power that we all need access to, which is something that would allow them to be human. If Musk and his compatriots truly wish to change the world, to use their money and their influence for something that furthers humanity, then they must take their egos out of it. They can't see themselves as the center of things because that is not the world we live in anymore. As long as they try to make everything about themselves, they will never be truly great men. To be a truly great man, you have to be a good man first, which means learning humility. It means giving freely to those who help you achieve your goals, such as your workers and advisors, among others. It means accepting failure and defeat and the imperfections of being human. Public disgrace shouldn't mean that you have to hide all evidence of those issues, manipulating media platforms into submission. It's a chance for growth. It means seeing yourself as a vessel for greater ideas to flow through, and being grateful to the universe that you were blessed with that power, trying to use it wisely. People don't realize it, but they will keep hating Musk for stupid reasons like his hair transplant or his private jet, but they don't really hate him for those things. They hate him because he's not sharing. And not his wealth, but the power that has been gifted to him. He needs to recognize the awesome responsibility of being in that position and shouldering it with other people, not alone. We are all merely pieces in the puzzle, just as he is. This is America, and it is not the age of kings and religious prophets or would-be saviors. It is the age of the masses. It might take a qualified therapist or a self-help book or a guide or even a guru of some kind, but I am sure he can afford it. And to be fair, I'm not even saying he needs to be perfect or spiritual, just that he should be a bit more in touch with the average person that he claims to want to help. We have a chance to redefine what being rich looks like in the modern world. Or people like him can just wait until the eat the rich folks get their way, but I can't imagine that would be pretty. Or if you can't do the hard work, because many rich folks have been coddled from the responsibilities of reality, then accept your role as just a businessman. Move on from the world-saving business, and just do enough to make money and live, and be grateful that responsibility isn't yours. Because if you can't handle the real pressure and responsibilities that come with being that person, then maybe you're not really wired for it in the first place. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and share if you can. If you like this video, then check out my video on empathy across the aisles featuring Yellowstone and the Batman. It's a compare and contrast about the current political system in America. And if the comments are any indication, it will shift your thinking in a meaningful way. Or if you're just looking to have some fun this weekend, you can watch my video on Digimon, which is pretty interesting. It's all about the hopes and dreams of the internet for millennials from back in the day. Anyways, hope you guys are doing well, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!